Hi, welcome to You Didn't Get the Memo. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray. And as always, it's exciting to be able to bring to you yet again another episode of You Didn't Get the Memo show. Always, we have great guests, and I want to just thank all of you who are tuning in. As a reminder to my viewers, if you have questions for my guests today, be sure and place them in the comment section. We'll do our very best to respond to them. Also, if you are new, I want to welcome you to the show and thank you for tuning in. You Didn't Get the Memo is about providing you, the viewer, with relevant, factual, mainstream information to help you be informed and to make informed decisions. For those of you who have been following me for a very long time, you know how important it is to bring information to the viewers that will help you to be informed. But let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. I actually have Mr. Dorian Bohler, who is a scientist. He's a physicist. And as a scientist, an educator, a leader, and an author, he is committed to inspiring youth to excel in the field of science and technology. He's a native of Detroit, Michigan, the Big D, and he now resides in the Bay Area. Dorian knew from a very early age that academics would take him far places. He holds a dual degree in engineering from Morehouse College and from Georgia Institute of Technology, where he studied physics and mechanical engineering. He spent the last 5 years as a physicist at the SLAC, which stands for Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, which is a national basic research laboratory. And it is operated by Stanford University. So, you know, this brother is heavy and he comes with a lot of knowledge and information. When he's not working at the lab, one of the things that my guest loves to do, first of all, he serves as a board member and a youth program director for Kappa Community Projects, which is a 501c3 in Oakland, California, which provides scholarships, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math education, and leadership training to young men of color in the Bay Area. So I'd like to welcome to the show my awesome guest, Mr. Dorian Bohler. Thank you, Dorian, so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, it's like in all my years of going to nursing school and things, I just can't recall, meeting a physicist. So this is exciting because, one of the things that I loved in having dialogue with you was your love for the science. And one of the things, as we all know, a lot of our black and brown young men and women, they are lagging behind when it comes to really having a good grasp around math. And what interested me was to be able to have you on the show to talk about how we can hopefully transform and change some lives and do some things. So I'm going to first of all start out, though I like to level set with you just telling us your backstory, just a couple of minutes, where you grew up and what influenced you as a child?
Yeah. So once again, happy to chat with you. I definitely have a lot of ideas and some experience around helping the youth. I'm originally, as you mentioned, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Born and raised the inner city, public schools, etc. And my earliest sort of influences were probably from my mother. It was her job to make sure that I got the best education that we could get, and I think her approach to that was making sure that she filled all of my time with as many extracurricular activities that met my interests. So as a child, I was a tinkerer. I was always taking things apart, trying to figure out how they worked. And so before they called them STEM programs, I was a member in the Detroit area pre-college engineering program in like the fourth or fifth grade. And throughout my entire matriculation through high school, I was busy in a program doing science and engineering every summer, and that had a big impact on what college I chose, how prepared I was to enter the STEM sort of workforce, and has really formed, my commitment to the community, because those type of programs were very impactful. So that's, in a nutshell, that's me.
Okay, awesome. Well, of course, I have a love for Detroit with relatives still there. So, hearing that and hearing your story, so it leads me to the next question, which is what prompted you as a scientist to become interested in the field of physics? Because when I look at all of this, of course, it's like, what does all this mean? But there was something that caught your eye and caused you to want to become a physicist. So, talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I can't say that that was the goal that I originally set out with. But as I look back at programs that I did as a child, every one of them was like physics based. So my earliest research projects were like the physics of roller coasters, and then designing, interstellar travel in terms of, astronauts and studying space, and things like that. And I did very well in those areas. Eventually when I went to college and I majored in physics and mechanical engineering, uh, my first experience as a scientist was working for NASA. And I had never heard of the Bay Area, or or Silicon Valley for that matter. And I ended up working as an intern at the NASA Ames research facility, and ended up doing astrophysics research and studying planets and other solar systems, and getting the opportunity to actually work with other scientists, to see their lifestyles, and to understand what it felt like to work at a laboratory, really formed my opinion on what I wanted to do in my career. And so I ended up pursuing it.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do because you are working now with Slack, which, of course, is down at Stanford. And I have to admit, I had not ever heard of Slack. Of course, everybody's heard about Stanford University,
Right.
but, talking about what you do, and I just want to say to the viewers, we're actually leading up to what we're going to get into because this is really critical. So I'm just going to ask you guys to hang in here for the next 50 minutes because this information will be critical to you, especially if you have, young children, boys and girls. But we want them to really grasp and hold on to the importance of why you need to do very, very well in school. So I'm just level setting what it is that my guest does. And the question to you, Dorian, that was on the table, is to just talk about the work that you do. And I guess we can make it two part.
Sure.
And at that, what role does physics play in everyday life? Because everything that we do, it involves physics. So let's make that simple and tell our viewers what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, sure. So I work at the Linear Accelerator, which is like a 2 mile long science project where we create some of the highest powered X-rays in the world. And we use those X-rays to take the highest resolution images of, things like COVID samples. We study new materials, and things like that. And specifically, I'm responsible for about a quarter-mile section, all the devices, the magnets, the software, everything that happens in a particular section, I am responsible for it. And my research interest is actually using artificial intelligence to run the accelerator automatically. And so I've spent the last couple of years doing that. But if we take a step back and we talk about, why do I care whether or not people study physics or get into it? I think it really comes down to thinking. I'm more of a practical, kind of pragmatic person. So you won't really catch me talking too much about the Big Bang theories and the existence of the universe, even though I've studied those areas and can train. What I love the most about physics is learning the approach, understanding, how to think like a scientist. How do you break a problem down to, you know, the first principles. How do you understand how to look at the data? How to spot pseudoscience? You know, that's coming to a lot of play as we talk about the, you know, medical field and vaccines and statistics and things like that. And what's been the most useful is that, you know, with the formal training, I feel like I was equipped to learn anything. And as a curious person, it's just been a very rewarding to know how to pick up a book, to have no barriers as it relates to math or computer science, and to just be able to follow my mind anywhere that I've chosen. So,
Yeah, one of the things that you and I, when we were talking, and I hope people caught that, artificial intelligence, I think I shared with you that's something that for me has been around. I believe that it has been around and been in use for a very long time. And then hearing you say that you've worked in that particular medium and dealt with it. So, with that, you keep saying a couple of words that are resonating with me is the curiosity, the understanding. So, you know what? One of the things that we hear a lot of children say is that I don't like math. I don't like science. And what do they hear? They hear the parents saying, I don't like math. This is too much. And it has never become more evident than now with the pandemic, and parents are at home trying to homeschool their children and they have no clue. So my question to you is, first of all, in your opinion, why should parents encourage children to embrace math? And we've talked about the physics part, but just simple, basic, you have children, why
yeah,
is that important? Tell us your thoughts on that.
yeah. So, one of my favorite teachers growing up had a saying, the more math you take, the more money you make. And I've never forgotten it. And the longer I live, the more I realize that that's actually true. And so it's given me a wealth of opportunities. It's, you know, having an basic understanding in mathematics um, gives you the language to understand what's going on regardless of where you are in the world. There are so many, you know, research papers and different opportunities that people could pursue if they just had, you know, a basic understanding of algebra, a little bit of calculus, a little bit of statistics, and then you can end up, you know, just following your interests wherever you want. Um, Overall, too, this as a parent, you have to realize there are a lot of studies that suggest that the study of mathematics within itself help to help your children to formulate their brains larger. And so, what does that mean? Formulate the brain larger. I'm basically just trying to say that as the student gets into studying mathematics, it allows them to be better at recognizing patterns, thinking logically, and being able to solve problems as they, you know, matriculate into high school or college or into their adult life. So it really trickles into every area of activity.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment from one of our viewers, and basically it says we've placed our children's minds in a box. And hearing you talk about the fact that the more math, first of all, I love that. The more math, the more money you make. So you guys make sure that you make that your mantra when you're talking to your kids. But at the same time, the question is, we have adults who don't do well in math. They've not done well, and so I guess the question is, why do you think that this still is the mindset? What is it that has caused this across? Because I mean, even for me growing up as a kid, and of course, I don't even know, trigonometry, geometry, those things. And I remember one of my classmates who is now a physician, and one of the things he used to challenge me to do is, you got this, you got this. And when I would get frustrated, just break it down. But in your opinion, you know, why do you think it is, and how can we overcome these negatives? That's the first thing, because unless they embrace that, that was the reading, writing, math, you got to have that. So how do we, you're sitting here, and we're talking, so to the parents, to the grandparents, to the aunts and the uncles and all of that, what can you say that can help them to overcome this
Hmm.
negative belief and thought?
Yeah. So one of the biggest barriers that I talk to parents about is they didn't have success, or they haven't connected with mathematics. And I don't believe either one of my parents was naturally gifted or very interested in math. Like you, my mother is a nurse, right? And so when you say, well, how do we overcome that, right? We're in a technological society. Math is the language through which these things are communicated. So how, as a parent, do I support my child's development in that area? And I think my mom gave me a good direction and it has to be a priority. So, if your child needs help in different areas, if there are other programs, it just has to be a expectation in a household, is that we're going to nip this in the bud, and there's not going to be anybody that's not a high performance student in mathematics. Um, I see a lot of other communities who do things a little differently. Like one of the things that I've viewed is that other people invest a lot more in math education. So where we're just trying to make sure that we don't fall behind, or parents might invest in tutoring if there's an issue, I see other communities kind of investing to get their students ahead a year or two. So I think being more aggressive in our approach certainly would help overcome any deficiencies.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Me personally, parents don't get upset, but I just don't think that summer school should be for kids to repeat something that they should have gotten during the school year. Instead, summer school should be for you to have the advanced courses and to get ahead, which actually helps your grade point average, right? Your probably the ability to get into a better school, and those are some of the things that we might want
Yeah.
to consider. So I'm
But if I
sorry.
could, if I could add too,
Sure.
we have young children. My kids are 6, 7, and we have one who's 4 months. And what's different, I think, about our household is we really incorporate math into our family time,
Mm.
right? So it's not just what summer program are you in. It's like my favorite game growing up with my grandmother was Shoots and Ladders, right? And
Hmm.
so we've incorporated a little bit of multiplication, a little bit of fractions
There you
here,
go.
and
There you
just
go.
taking cooking dinner together as an opportunity to really interweave as much math as we can into our family.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, when we come back, I want you to think on this question. We always got to pay the bills here, but let's talk about. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the role that a teacher plays in setting the tone for children, especially, of course, because we know math, but just overall doing well in school. So, you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo with my awesome guest, Mr. Dorian Bohler.
Let's get back to talking smack with the side of mac and cheese. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Get the facts? Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? Now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
All right. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And for those of you who are chiming in, Dorian, one of the things I want to just share with you, some of the comments that people are making as it relates to what the subject matter we're talking about. Math of any kind is intimidating. What would you say to your audience to help them overcome this phobia? And this was one of the questions that going in into break was to ask you, what are your thoughts about the role that a teacher plays in setting the tone for children to actually like math and to like school overall? Thank you so much for that question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we give teachers enough credit. Their jobs are very, very demanding, and I don't think they make nearly enough money. Let me start by saying that. Teachers are super important when it comes to getting your children to engage in any subject, but especially in mathematics. And my best teachers went above and beyond to make the subjects accessible to me. And so that's certainly my approach in developing physics and basketball. We can talk about how do we make things more interesting. But I think also if you end up, coming across teachers who aren't so engaged, then you really have to understand that ultimately it's the parent's responsibility to make sure that you are either putting your child in another program or giving them a different opportunity, or you're switching schools. I think we cannot gamble or take anything short of our goals academically, and that's really up to the parents.
hmm I agree with you. We have a comment from one of the viewers, and that is that we also need to hold school districts accountable for incorporating math and science concepts daily as early as preschool, and that is critical. I just think that we're missing so many of those pieces. So thank you so much for that comment. So here is the next question that I have that's burning for me, for you, Dorian, is let's talk about the STEM programs and the need for future generations to have the ability to succeed in the future. And what I'm going to start with, there are a number of areas that I want you to touch on. And you guys, we're actually going to have a show that's going to talk about a lot of these things. But let's just start with blockchain technology. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the main areas that we need to be developing new education programs. It's a buzzword, right? You hear about it on, Bitcoin on CNBC, and a lot of our parents, or people my age or older, aren't so familiar with them, and they aren't really participating in this explosion in technology that's happening, and it's essentially, the future of many technologies, but certainly the future of finance. And so I would say, do a Google search and get your kids in any blockchain development program that you can find, because it's certainly going to be very, very important for them.
Okay, absolutely. All right. So cybersecurity, thoughts?
Cybersecurity. So it's one of my holy trinities. So in terms of STEM education, um, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity. As you've seen, there are more and more hacks. I see that the fact that you're going to see wars that have started to move online. We're going to have to do a better job of protecting our own information, right? And the data infrastructures that protect all of the different websites that we use. And so if you're looking for career opportunities, I say cybersecurity is probably one of the biggest opportunities available for youth.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, which you hit on a little bit, but can you expound a little bit more? People, I think when I spoke with you, we were talking about back in the day, the Jetsons, right? Some
Hmm.
of y'all, I'm dating myself, but some of y'all remember the Jetsons. And so, you know what? You had to stop to think that somebody somewhere, this wasn't just something somebody just kind of formulated out of the air. But when we talk about artificial intelligence, from your vantage point and your view as a physicist and a scientist,
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that. And hopefully you
Yeah,
guys are tuned in because it's real, it's happening.
yeah. So I think the most useful thing is to think about where the world is going, and the automation of every career that you can think of, and to think about well, how is law going to change in the future? How is medicine going to change in the future? How is science? And that's how I got into it as a physicist. I started to think about, well, am I going to lose my job one day? Because I'm not always going to be sitting here at a computer manually crunching through the data and trying to connect the pieces. So what we have to do is understand what tools are being developed now. And I mean, it's just so amazing. Even in the last 5 years, it's become so much easier to do things like machine learning, to run physics experiments. You think about our major companies like Google, they have tools and different suites of software that you can just, you can get online and without even a lot of coding, start to automate your marketing if you have a business, and figuring out which customers on Facebook, or sending out emails to your newsletter. I mean, the opportunities are just unlimited. And so it's something that you have to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually leads into a question about how can having, and not even having a strong background, because we've covered that, but how do we close the achievement gap that's seen in our Black and brown boys and girls in terms, and in particular, I just like to ask you to touch on maybe some resources. I know that you're involved and you do a plethora of work, and I think this would be a good time to talk about what you do, but mentors and classes and tutors and programs, things of that nature. So how do we close that achievement gap based upon what you've seen and what you do? Please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one thing that was kind of alarming is coming out of COVID. I began to work with school districts, and I saw directly how much the last year and a half or two has really impacted our kids. So before I say anything else, I think that it's very important that as we come into the next school year, that anybody who is having any issues whatsoever, certainly around core skills and fundamentals, you need to be working with your counselors at school, your school administrators, people from your local churches or STEM groups, or et cetera, and just finding any resources you can to help you, get along. For the last 10 years or so, I've been involved in a number of initiatives. One, as you mentioned, through the Guy Wright program, through Kappa Alpha Psi. We continue to do leadership developing and mentoring, and putting young people in college and providing scholarships for them. And so I think it's certainly important to connect with mentors and to people who have done, and accomplished some of the things that you like to. It's also important that students are able to spend time with people in different fields and get a feel for how they live. What kind of car this person drives. Is this a family person? Just to give more of an influence on what success can look like for that individual person. And I'd also mention we started the physics and basketball program, which is really aimed at just getting more students excited about STEM. And what we did in the book that we wrote in 2018 is we drew a parallel to say, well, this is how you improve on and off the court. So there's a certain approach to getting better as a basketball player. And then there's a certain approach to becoming better as a student. And we said, you set goals, you assess your achievement, you aim for mastery, and then you ingrain for performance. And so we teach students how to do that directly from grades first all the way to 12. And so if anybody could use any kind of support, please reach out to us.
Mm-hmm. And that's really good to know. One of the things that I'd like to underscore is also, with your children, we talk about mentors, but also when children are confident in their knowledge base, they present themselves differently. And one of the things that is important is that we're trying to raise up leaders. We're trying to raise up our young men and women to be leaders, to take the helm. We know that if we don't do this, and parents, grandparents, great aunties, play aunties and uncles, whatever you are, the thing is you want your kids to be better than you were, than what you had. And the world is vastly different from when we came up, right? There ain't no longer you buying a $10,000 house on an acre of land. So our kids have got to be able to survive, and that's what we're talking about. And at the same time, you know, making them strong and confident leaders. Now, Dorian, I'm going to ask you this question. I don't know if you have an answer to it, but I just know as a parent at one point, when I found out, and by the way, parents, you can check out and see what the scores are at the schools. You know, where does your child's school score as it relates to scholastic learnings, right? And a lot of times people have to really think about, I want my kid to be in a school where they're going to get the tools that they need. And that comes down to, and here's my question, parents' ability to transfer a child from a low performing school to a high performing school, because that old saying is, you know what, birds of a feather flock together. So if you're in a school where ain't nobody trying to do anything except for just hang, as opposed to aspiring to doing something better, you may want to think about being able to transfer your school to a higher performing school. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but I know as a parent, that's one of the things that I had to do.
Yeah, certainly finding the school that works for you is important. Sometimes that could be a school within a school, right? So what I mean by that is, what track are you on in that school? Are you taking honors classes or advanced placement? Are you involved in the right types of extracurricular activities that are going to allow you to make connections with the best performing students that you can choose from? So I think that's really my choice. We don't always have the opportunity to change schools, but we definitely can change how we move within whatever systems we exist in. I think the other point that's important is that there's so much available outside of school. And I don't think you can ignore it. You can't send your child to school and expect that they're going to get what they need. There's got to be time allocated afterwards. You got to go to the museums. You got to get in the programs. We have to do the tutoring. You have to have the experiences that inspires your child. So if they're in the music, well, we're going to be in the music. You're going to make that album, and then we're going to show you, how to attach some of the technology things or the things that we'd like you to learn in the formal classroom into, the thing that you're most passionate about. So I think those are, some key ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I'd like for us to talk about the correlation between, of course, having not only good math skills, but, overall just good scores, and how it correlates to being able to identify for a top college and career readiness. Okay, so don't go anywhere. Thank you guys for hanging in and for tuning in. You are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo Show. We'll be right back.
A lot of people say when you're going somewhere, you don't want to look back. But I beg to differ. I can't lie and say it was easy. I looked at everything in a different light. I realized it started with me going back and getting my high school diploma.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to load their minds. Dare to explore. Dare to STEM. Learn more at She Can STEM.
Thank you for watching the You Didn't Get the Memo Show with your inspirational host, Gloria Bailey Ray. It's your contributions that make this happen. To become a sponsor, send an email to youdidn'tgetthememo@gmail. That's the letter U, didn't get the memo. If you're not in a space to be a sponsor, but you like what you hear, we simply ask that you support what you like by making a contribution to the show. There are 3 ways to make an online donation. Visit paypal.me/Gloria Bailey Ray or Cash App or Venmo, Gloria Bailey Ray. Give what you can. Your support is appreciated.
All right. If you guys are just tuning in, I love the fact that you're chiming in and you are really appreciating the comments that my guest, Mr. Dorian Bohler, has to say. Before we went to break, one of the questions that I just asked Dorian, if he would talk about the strong correlation of, math and just overall doing well in school and being able to identify and apply for colleges that you really want to go to. So let's talk about college and career readiness, and then we'll just kind of move and talk about core educational assessment areas, leadership, mentorship, and digital learning. So let's just start with, kids are coming out and they want to go to college, right? And some of them hear about the party schools and some of them hear, let's be real, but you've got to balance that. But it's really and truly what it is that you're hoping to accomplish. So can you talk about the correlation of doing really well in high school and taking those extra classes and how it allows you to be in a better position to apply for certain colleges and schools?
Yeah, I don't think it's any secret, right, that your academic performance really does drive the number of opportunities that you have. I think if we think about student loan debt, right, and that being a huge area that's impactful for our communities and limiting our wealth generation, you certainly have to, get the best grades that you can so that you can get the most, scholarship funds, et cetera. The thing that I really like to offer is we're seeing a little bit of a trend, a change, right? So I think this was one of the first years that most of the colleges didn't actually require standardized testing. And I saw a number of students who opted out of the tests and, the results were not the best. And so I would really encourage any students and parents who are, going through and planning to go to college. I think you should still study for and take the SAT or the ACT and just take it as an opportunity to really prepare and try to do as well as you can because it's still very useful. Another thing that I like to see students doing, especially those who are interested in STEM fields, is doing their own research. You can really stand out amongst the crowd by, sending an email to a professor at a university or watching some YouTube videos and really just carrying out your own investigations and asking for feedback. And, the type of initiatives that shows so much about, what a person is actually made of. And, when you get ready to apply, you have good grades, you have your standardized test scores, and then there's this other area that you can stand up on its own and say, I'm super excited, I'm motivated, I'm self-taught, and I know how to reach out and get support for my areas of interest and expand my network. And I think if you do all of those things, you can probably write your ticket and go anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And I just want to underscore, you touched on an area that had to do with student loan debt. And it is vitally important that parents, you do your homework when it comes to student loans. Because I want to say to all of you that are college bound, thinking of going to college, don't believe the hype with your friends telling you just apply for student loans and you use that for party money. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay that money back. And there are so many people that are in debt. And by the way, it does hit your credit report. Right now, you're not thinking about it. But I say to parents, any way that you can. We've had a young man on the show, Mr. Jasper Smith, and one of the things that we talked about was how you do certain things in place. You saw the commercial where you start to plan, open up a savings account, even when you have small children, and the things that you can do. So there are many, many ways, but don't end up in debt because you took out school loans. But when we talk about, and I love the fact that you encourage people to go out and to do some research on their own, that goes a long way when you have to write a paper as to why, colleges should even accept you. What are your interests? And to be able to point and highlight to that, and that even a professor at one of the schools you reached out to and who commented on the project or gave you some feedback. I think that those things, we're just missing the boat, I think, on some of the basic simple things, it seems like, when it comes to things that you can do to bolster you going to school. So when we talk about core educational assessment areas, are there any thoughts around that, and especially leading into mentorship or leadership? I think maybe some students, even in high school, think that it doesn't matter if I show that I have leadership skills or if I'm mentoring someone, but I would beg to disagree. What are your thoughts on that, Dorian?
Yeah, I think it really depends, right? So certainly being involved in activities as a student is important. And I think that anything that you can get excited about and really own. So if it's working with younger students and being a youth leader or a youth mentor, then that's certainly fine. If you have ambitions that are more entrepreneurial and you want to start your own side business, or if you want to take a class and learn a little bit about cybersecurity and do a cybersecurity project, you don't have to do everything. I think you just have to, be able to show that you can choose something, you can stick to it, you can make progress, show interest, and sort of be reliable, and just show what type of character that you have.
Yeah. And I think it goes without saying that digital learning, we now know that, your kids aren't just looking to play video games on a computer, but they really do need the type of technology that will allow them to do homework and research and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So one thing I mentioned earlier about blockchain technology, which I think is interesting. So there are people who are actually making money playing video games that are backed by blockchain technology. So we can't go so hard against students who are playing games these days. In general, I think that this is an amazing time. It's sort of like the Matrix. Anything that you want to learn, there's a website called YouTube, and you can just go directly to this website. And I mean, you can practically learn anything: playing an instrument, programming a new computer language, learning something extremely esoteric about physics, and setting our children up and putting them in a sort of situation and sort of giving them the guidance to go out and discover this world and learn on their own is probably the most important thing we could do as parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to transition because besides you being a scientist, an educator, a mentor, a leader, you're also an author. And I want to ask you, you wrote a book called Physics and Basketball. And by the way, for those of you who hang in here to the end, we're going to be giving away a book by my guest, Mr. Dorian Bohler. And I just want you to talk about physics and basketball. I picked it up and I started reading and reading and reading, and I found it very interesting. So, what's the connection between physics and basketball? Talk about why you wrote this book. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
the
I'm
title.
always sort of invited into the classroom, and when I start talking to students about like X-ray free electron lasers and particle accelerators, I could lose them quickly. And so I always take a moment. I say, well, what do you want to be? And I want to be in the NBA, or I play on a basketball team. And basketball has been my favorite sport most of my life. And so I thought, well, how do I connect the two? How do I bridge the gap? How do I do something that's interesting for me as a scientist and as a teacher that would allow me to engage more students? And so in the book, I do a really basic introduction of an area of physics called mechanics, which actually describes, why the ball falls down when we throw it up in the air, and it describes spin, and it talks about, well, how should you shoot a jump shot in order to maximize the probability that the shot will go in, and all these other things in basketball. So it was really just gave me the opportunity to match up some of my my passions and my work with youth. So that's why I wrote the book.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's very interesting, and I liked it so much that I also downloaded it on my reader, my Kindle as well. So thank you for writing, this particular book. I encourage all of you guys. It is on Amazon, and you can get the book. But also throughout the show, I have been flashing how you can actually get more information, because one of the things that's interesting is Dorian is so connected with so many different programs. So you can reach out and make sure that you get the information that is specific to your child or grandchild or nephew or niece, right? Also, there's his Twitter handle as well. So, one of the things that I would like to ask Dorian is actually two-part. The first one is, based upon what we've discussed so far today, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, well, I tend to sleep okay, but as I sort of alluded to earlier, I was really taken aback um, by the level of math and the level of engagement that some of the students were kind of facing coming out of COVID. So I had a lot of families that I talked to, and they, said, "Hey, Dorian, I had to go into work. My son, who's in middle school, had to not only log in, and he's not the kind of student who would do well logging in and taking a course, but he also had to watch his younger sister." And just seeing how that has impacted people has really bothered me. And what I just like to offer this to just anyone that's in an earshot is, if you feel like you're at a moment where you just need support, or you need an individual to sort of point you in the right direction, or just kind of explain to any academic challenges that you have, please reach out to us, and we'll certainly just try to connect you with any resources that we can find. For us, it's and I say us because I'm part of this large organization, and even the national lab that I work towards. There's just so many people who are waiting and available to help other people. So I'm more of a connector, and I love to do what I can, but that's a problem we need to address.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And what would you like people who are watching the show today to take away from our discussion?
um, nothing about me personally. Don't take anything about me away from the discussion. Take it as a moment to stop and think about how much you're investing in your child's education, and it's not a financial thing. How much time? Think about what problems do you see on the horizon, and I want people to be really aggressive about being more proactive, because I just see so many students who just could use a little more support and a tougher push from parents. And I know things are hard. My mother raised me alone, and I realize that there are a number of challenges that come with those things. But if you don't do it, it's really going to minimize the opportunities that your child has.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why we do this show, I always start out with saying it's about providing our viewers with the relevant, factual, mainstream information and help them be informed. And I think what you've shared today is it's transformational, it's inspirational, and it is something that we need. And my goal is to always highlight all of the wonderful things that people are doing out there and to get people involved. So I just really and truly thank you so much for your time, for being able to talk. And again, I want to just remind people that they can contact Dorian at sportscienceproject.com, right? Sportscienceproject.com. Give him, reach out to him. What do you have to lose? And then also you can follow him. His handle is on Twitter is at Dorian Bohler. Dorian, what I like to say to you is, first of all, I am just happy and humble and grateful that you would take the time out of your day, because what you do, and when I'm just reading the scope of where you're at and what you're doing, is massive. And we all, in my opinion, I feel that we all have a responsibility to future generations. And it's either we're part of the solution or part of the problem. And so I thank you for being so willing to hang in here and, to talk with us today. I'm going to say, don't you go anywhere. I want to say to our viewers, I want to thank you guys for all your comments, for hanging in there, for really appreciating what we do here at You Didn't Get the Memo, and for sharing what we do. Remember that you can go back, you can share this. It stays up on the Facebook page or my YouTube page, and share this information, because I know that there are others out there that would so very much appreciate having this type of information. And that is really and truly what it's all about. So let me just also share with you, not only thank you, my guest, Mr. Dorian Bohler, for being on the show today, but also, if you are interested in getting your son, grandson, granddaughter, or any male or female child or relative to contact Dorian. A gentle reminder to all of you to please support our efforts by inquiring about our sponsorship package opportunities, or if you'd like to be a supporter, so that we can continue to bring this type of programming to you to keep you informed. And you can do that by making a donation of any kind. There is a blessing in the giving. I'm going to also ask that you guys be sure and follow me on all my social media platforms, and mark your calendars for every Tuesday at 5 p.m. for always a great show on You Didn't Get the Memo. Now, I told you would be able to score a copy of Dorian's book called Physics and Basketball. So if you like to score a copy of this guest book, I need you to send an email to you, the letter U, didn't get the memo, at gmail.com. And in the subject line, just write Physics and Basketball book. But be sure and include your mailing address in the body of the email, so that we make sure that we get it to you. I want to share one last comment that we had. The fact that one of our viewers appreciate the comments. However, the achievement gap begins before kindergarten, and we are not genetically inferior. Amen to that. We need systems in place to address the social determinants of education. So thank you so much for that. We also have, comments. Thank you, Dorian, and awesome and informative show. Much thanks and blessings to Mr. Dorian Bohler. So guys, thank you so much. Keep it coming. Keep tuning in. I appreciate you. And I just want to remind all of you, shout out to all the new viewers, sponsors, donors. And as always, I say, if you didn't take anything away from today's show, then it's you who didn't get the memo. So until this time next week, I want you to have a great week. I want you to give thanks for all of your blessings. Stay safe, mask up, get vaccinated, and always remember to pay it forward. At the end of the day, I always say this, and I believe this with all my heart and soul, the quality of your life is determined by the decisions that you make. I'm Gloria Bailey Ray. I'm your host. Until this time next week, be well. Peace.